Hey friends, welcome back to the Finding Joy in Your Home podcast. I am your host, Jami, and today we're talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart as I have been struggling with this past week. And really the last 3 months being pregnant. So we're going to talk about what do you do when your patience is really low? Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about some biblical encouragement, some biblical perspective, and also some practical things that you can do. So this will be hopefully it'll be a good hands-on practical episode for you. All right. So before we dive in, I did want to let you know about our brand new app, the Joyful Home app. It is absolutely incredible. The most incredible project we have ever worked on because it's taking 100% of all of our resources that we've ever done and putting them all into one spot. So in this app, you can find all of our brand new stuff that's coming out, like our new audiobooks we're releasing, new books by Jason and I. We've got new courses, new boot camps, new conferences, everything we do. Instead of having to buy a $60 ticket to the 2024 Finding Joy in Your Home online conference that's going to be coming out in May, instead of buying a separate ticket, you just get it as part of the app. But it also has all of our back catalog of courses, conferences, everything inside it. It's really, really incredible. So I shared last week on the podcast about it, and I directed you guys to go to joyfulhomeapp.com. Well, when you go to that, it just takes you to the actual app, which is great because you can check it out and look at it. You can, either download the app to your phone or use the web browser. It works really fantastically on the computer as well. It's beautiful, wonderful website. I mean, you guys are just going to be blown away. The feedback we have gotten has been absolutely incredible. However, I also told you that we had a great coupon code going on and you could learn more about the app. So I sent you to the wrong page. So if you would like to get the coupon code to get 20% off the app month after month, and to really check out and see the heart behind this, what it is, what's going to be coming, go to findingjoyinyourhome.com/app. All right. findingjoyinyourhome.com/app. And I'm sorry for giving you that wrong link. It's hard when you're on a podcast episode. You can't go back and correct what's already been said. So findingjoyinyourhome.com/app. Okay. So let's dive straight into this episode. So we're talking about when your patience is really low. All right. So I am currently pregnant. And as you know, if you've been pregnant, it can take it out of you, can just already make you tired and, aches and pains and all of the things, right? You're growing a baby. And I was sick this last week. And actually, as I was sitting down to write these notes, I was sneezing like 20 times, like literally. So I'm really hoping I can actually get through this podcast episode without too much sniffling and sneezing. Jason might have his work cut out for him when he goes to edit this episode. But I am feeling a lot better. I was dead for a couple of days, just totally, completely knocked out. It hit me harder than anybody else in the family, which we had a sickness back in February do the same thing. So I think it's just pregnant. I don't typically actually get sick that often, but man, it's been a week again, and I'm feeling so much better now, but I still, you got the lingering stuff. Okay. So the point is, with these things piling up, I also personally feel like I have way too much going on. I'm starting to feel a little like, we've got a big move coming up. We're going to California in a couple of weeks for a funeral. So not a fun thing. We've got just 50 million things, right? One of those seasons where you're like, oh my word, like, how do I get done everything I need to do? So that's the backstory. Okay. All this stuff going on. And there's different seasons we all enter, right? That have one thing or another that's kind of dragging us down for one reason, like whatever it is that you are finding yourself just kind of at that point of impatience. I have found my temper slipping more than once this last week, and probably many more than once. I had 2 days in particular where I was so run down. And Jason's working a ton, trying to get everything done for our California trip and for the move. And so I've just had to keep the house running. When mom's sick, you just got to keep going and get stuff done, right? So, and we've just had energy. The kids have been whiny, and it's a week. And I had about 2 days where I was just not my best behavior. And I was yelling and impatient and just kind of generally grumpy. Like I wasn't like the worst version of myself, but I was not the best version. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I just, like, I got to the end of that second day and we get the kids to bed and I should be fine now. Like, kids are in bed. I'm going to finally relax. And I must have looked real grumpy because Jason walks out of the bedroom and he's like, honey, what's wrong? And I was like, nothing. And he's like, no, seriously, what's wrong? And I kind of realized at that moment, I was still in a bad attitude. And I realized at that moment, I really don't have anything. I don't need to be in a bad mood right now. I just am, and I felt run down and tired and impatient and cranky and crabby and all of those things. And so it was just one of those moments that I was like, yeah, here I am now being crabby at Jason for literally no reason other than I just feel terrible. I feel stressed. I'm tired and I'm just generally now in a bad mood. And so that's what I've been dealing with this past week and kind of just realizing, okay, and I kind of realized it here and there, but then, you're tired and run down and you just don't always want to make the better choice. So I got to this point where I was like, no, it doesn't matter how I'm feeling. It doesn't matter how bad I feel. And I wasn't like dying. I just, this cold has just taken it out of me and I still have a bunch of stuff to do. Right. And yet I was letting that absolutely just affect my attitude. I was letting that crabbiness come out and just not like my patience was like absolute razor thin. And so the next morning we get up and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a better attitude today. And, I can't remember now, but we were starting to do something. I think we were starting to do chores and one of the kids starts kind of whining about it. And I was like, so fast. My patience was gone, like -10. And this fast, I wanted to just be like, just do the work, like I was already like, done. My attitude was gone. And I had to literally just like stop myself before the sentence started, literally bite my tongue and be like, no, this is what happens is your patience gets low. You just get into that response mode. And yes, the kids were being a little whiny, like they needed to work on their attitude too. Other people can sin. Other people can have bad things that are going on. But I need to recognize that I am in control of my own attitude. And I really just, it was the turning point for me this week of going, no, I am tired. And so the kids and I just kind of sat down real fast and said, hey guys, mom's feeling real tired. I know that I've been very impatient with you this week. I apologized, said I'm so sorry for how my attitude's been. I know that I've been yelling more. I know that like my attitude is just so like, I've just been on a hair trigger. And I said, so I'm sorry. Will you please forgive me? We went through the whole thing. And I said, and, at the same time, you guys have been extra whiny this week as well, because I think they're fighting off the sickness too. So there needs to be some grace around as well. And, just kind of said, hey, here's some things we're going to work on today. And we're all going to work on having better attitudes. We're all going to work on this together. And it was a good just kind of reset and a really good reminder for myself of what I needed to be doing. And so I still feel under the weather. I'm not feeling 100%. I am pregnant. You've got all those hormones, right? And so it's something that I've daily been needing to remind myself and, realize, okay, my patience is getting thin, but I'm responsible for this. So what I wanted to do is walk through, I think I have 6 or 7 different points of what we can walk through when we get to that point of overwhelm, of patience being thin, of anger, of frustration, of exhaustion and tiredness and all, hormones, all of the different things. I really want to talk about what can we do biblically, what should our perspective be, and practically, what can we do in this situation? Okay. So number 1, it is okay. And it is even good to recognize why your patience is running so thin. There might very well be extenuating circumstances. If I was not sick and I was not pregnant this week, I probably would not have had quite near the same response, right? There are things outside of our control that absolutely can have an impact, but it is also not an excuse to sin. And this is where it's really easy. Well, I'm just pregnant, so I'm on edge, or it's just my time of the month, so I'm crabby, or I'm, all of these different things. We can have sick kids, pregnancy, hormones, perimenopause, going through menopause, finances, children who aren't listening, lack of sleep, weather that keeps everybody inside, whether it's too hot or too cold, or, there's so many more things that can really aid in this. And some of these things are out of our control. My hormones are all over the place right now. And that absolutely has an effect. I'm not denying that there's not things that can have an effect. And I think sometimes it can be good to recognize that. I tend to handle stress fairly well. I tend to be able to juggle a lot of kind of different things going on. And like a couple weeks ago, I got to this point where I was really starting to let future things in the next few months kind of start to really stress me out. And it was one of those where like I couldn't do anything about these things coming in a few months, but they're in my brain. And so I'm getting pre-stressed about them. And, I'm just kind of venting to Jason and letting it all out and kind of like, oh, and I've got to do this and this and this, and that like list just piles up. And Jason's like, well, honey, you also have to remember that you're pregnant. And I'm like, yeah, I know I'm pregnant. Like it makes it worse because then I got to get everything done because the baby's coming. Like, yeah, I get it. It's making me more stressed. And he's like, no, honey, you are more emotional. You're more tired because of it. Your capacity is not quite the same. And I think it's, kind of making you feel more stressed because of that. And it was a really good reminder that like I am pregnant and maybe feeling stressed is not actually a good barometer of how my day is going. Okay, I feel stressed for things that are coming in June. Right now in April. Okay, well, I need to let that go. I need to recognize that those feelings of stress are being contributed by my hormones, by my cortisol, and that I can recognize that you can kind of say, okay, I see that there are some reasons there. So I think it can be very helpful to recognize that you have some external stuff. I recognize that I'm way more run down this week because of sickness. So on Monday, we just took the entire day off. We barely did school. I ran a little bit of school from the couch, and the kids just kind of found activities to do. And we just had a very, I did not get off the couch much, other than making sure, everybody's safe and that we're all good until Jason was able to kind of step in and help in the evening. And, we just kind of got through the day and took it easy. So I recognize I'm sick. I need to kind of change what our expectations for today are. No, that must have been Tuesday because, yeah, it was Tuesday. Anyway, so what we need to remember is that those things can be factors in our mood. They absolutely can. They can be external things that are, or internal, such as pregnancy, things that are participating in the cause of our mood, or the cause of our anger or frustration or what have you. But we need to remember that we are still ultimately responsible for said mood. And it's not an excuse to lean into our mood. And it is very easy to be like, well, I'm pregnant, so it's a license to be crabby. Well, it's not. And we need to recognize that. We could walk through the lowest of the lowest pit, and God still expects us to walk it with joy and humility and love and kindness and patience. And that we can recognize that there's things going on contributing, but we are still responsible for it. Okay, so that's number one. Let's own up to that. All right, let's own up to our own responsibility. Number two, we are solely responsible for said mood. No one else's sin can cause us to sin, or at least it shouldn't. So we need to remember that too. Sometimes there are days where feels like all the kids are fighting, right? And, just one of those days that you're like, oh my gosh, this is a crazy day. And it can very much feel like it give you another excuse to sin back or to be impatient or to yell. And yet other people's sin does not cause us to sin, and nor should it. And so we need to remember that too, that you may have external things outside of your control that you have absolutely no control over, but God is still asking you to be obedient to him in your own heart, in your own actions. So that's the second thing I always have to remind myself of, because you live in a house with other sinners. You live in a world with other sinners. Other people's sin, other people's attitudes, other people's moods are going to affect yours. And or they're going to rub up against you. And we need to remember that it doesn't have to affect our mood, our responses, because ultimately we are responsible for our own sin. Number three. Okay, this one's huge. All right. Number three, pray and ask God for patience, for wisdom, for guidance, and for kindness. Now, really, in the heat of the moment, this should be number one. This should be absolutely the first thing. You start feeling like those emotions rising, you start snapping, you start opening your mouth to say something real rude. And in that moment, you shut your mouth and you just start praying and say, God, help me with wisdom. Help me to have patience. Help me with help me with my hormones, help me to feel better. Like there's so many things that we can pray for. And this should be the number one place that we are going to and asking. I think a lot of times people, we're a large family. We have baby number 8's on the way. We homeschool. We run a business from home. So we're around each other a lot, which can absolutely cause friction. And people a lot of times will say, oh, I could never have the patience to do that. Homeschool moms hear that a lot. I could never have the patience to homeschool. And I just kind of laugh because I don't think I have any extraordinary amount of patience. I don't think that I am particularly amazing in that department. I have certainly grown. And I think having children will absolutely grow you in patience, right? So where I am today is not where I was 12, 15 years ago in patience by any standard. And I'm so thankful for that. God grows us. And a lot of times God grows us through adversity. But I don't have an extraordinary gift of patience, but I have to pray and I have to ask for it. In fact, I can be a very impatient person. I can be someone who wants results right away, and we just do this, and you do X, Y, A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z will happen. Well, that's not the case, especially when children are involved. And I daily, minutely need to be asking God for patience, for wisdom, for peace. And so this really does need to be our number one thing. If you're struggling with impatience and anger and frustration and crabbiness and whatever this is, or the flip side of all those emotions is feeling down and feeling listless and feeling that kind of depression, and I can't do anything right. I don't want to do anything. I can't get up off the couch. I don't want to do any of those things. When we're feeling that as well, which I just think is kind of, it's coming from the same place, but it's kind of the anger, the impatience is more the action side of that same emotion, right? This is kind of the lazy side of that emotion. And we need to ask God, give me diligence, give me self-discipline, give me energy to do what I need to do. And that is where we need to start, is in prayer, asking God for these. Ask the Lord to give you more. If maybe you're struggling with your husband, you're struggling with emotions towards him, ask the Lord to give you love for your husband, to give you patience towards your husband. I had a few years ago, I had a situation with a gal that I was really struggling with having a heart of love towards her. And I felt annoyed. I felt hurt. I felt personally like I was on the wrong end of things. Like I was the one, I was the victim. No, I felt wronged. I also felt like I had some parts in that for sure, but I felt just angry and annoyed and kind of like I just didn't want to deal with it. And I just kept praying over a very long time that God would give me love for this person, that I would just be able to love them and not have to feel like everything needed to be righted, that there was things I could just let go, that every time I looked at them, I didn't have to feel annoyed. And I slowly, as I had interactions with this gal, I was able to just kind of be less annoyed and let it go more and more, into where all of a sudden one day I was like, oh yeah, there's no animosity there. Like I just feel like I can just go up to her and chat and, just feel fine. And so a lot of times we forget that we can pray for that we can pray that God would just give us not only wisdom and patience, but love for that person that we're maybe struggling with. And God, we know, is good and faithful. When we ask for wisdom, when we ask for that, he is good and faithful to give us those things. So that's the biggest. I mean, that is the absolute number one biggest. If you have one takeaway, it is to pray and to ask God for his supernatural help in this situation. All right. Now, number 4, let's talk about the practical side of things. Number 4 is to make some practical changes if need be. We do tend to over spiritualize matters kind of in our modern world. We tend to just think of the spiritual side. Absolutely, we should be praying, memorizing scripture, we're going to talk about in a minute. But the truth is, lack of sleep, sickness, not taking care of our bodies, a lot of things like this can lead to impatience, to anger, to so much more. And if you are experiencing, or maybe you always have, really, really, really extreme mood swings during your cycle, then that might absolutely be an indicator that you need to go get your hormones tested, that there might be some things that you can do to help balance out. The same way that if you're really, really, really struggling with lack of energy, where you're like, I can't even get off the couch, you need to get your hormones tested. So there are absolutely things that we can do that affect us. So if you're staying up way too late, you get the kids down to bed and you're like, this is my time. And you stay up way too late because you're like, it's finally my time to do my things. But then you don't get enough sleep. You wake up in a bad mood. It's affecting you because you're exhausted all day. You need to work on some things. You need to work on getting to bed earlier. You need to recognize that you do have some control in that. Now, sometimes we're up because kids are sick or we have a newborn and we're exhausted. So that's when we go, well, I can't physically sleep anymore. But I mean, trust me, when I have little babies waking up at night, there are many nights that I could choose to go to bed earlier and I still don't. So sometimes we can say, oh, it's because I have a baby. Well, you need to go to bed a little earlier still or try to get a nap in. But I forget what I was saying. Getting derailed. I'm thinking now, I'm going to have a newborn soon and I'm heading back into that of not sleeping. So if there's things out of your control, so you can, the next day you're exhausted and you're just so tired, ask God for energy, ask God for grace, ask God to help your attitude, even when you are feeling so tired and so run down. But there are physical things that we can do. I mean, sometimes it's like you just need to drink more water and take some vitamins and you start to feel better. You need to go out on a walk. You need to get some exercise in. What are some things that you maybe need to do to get off the couch, put your phone down, and do some things that are going to care for your body? There are actually absolutely physical things that you can do. So yes, you need to grow in patience yourself. Okay. No. So here's what I was going to say. Sorry, my notes are down here. If your patience is running thin, here's a good example. If your patience is running thin from children who just aren't going to obey, for example, something needs to change. So we can tend to just be like, oh, they're not listening. And we get more and more frustrated and I just yell at them and nothing happens. But you need to maybe figure out, we need to do something different. So yes, you need to grow in patience. But maybe you need to call a family meeting. You need to talk with your husband and say, hey, the kids are consistently not listening at this point, or we're consistently getting to the point where everybody's going crazy in the middle of the day, or before bed, or, whatever that situation is, we need to figure out a way to change this. So go to your husband, call a family meeting, come up with a new action plan, do something that you're going to change, or say, hey, we recognize we're not, me and my husband are not, being as consistent and following through as we need to. There's absolutely times where you could say, this behavior is driving me nuts, but there's real practical things. There's some steps that we need to take to mitigate this. So just look at what are some things maybe in your life that you need to change, or that you could change in order to help whatever kind of that current situation is. All right, number 5, here we go. This one's huge. Memorize and meditate on scripture. So this one's really, really big. When you're in the middle of feeling frustrated and upset, you stop and pray and then start reciting these verses back to yourself. Remind yourself of God's truth. So I'm just going to read a few. You can go to scripture and find so many. So Galatians 6:9 says, and let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. Okay, so we want to, even when it feels hard, even when it feels impossible, even when it feels like you're going to pull your hair out, don't give up in doing good. Keep persisting, keep growing. You're going to grow in patience. Little by little, one day you're going to do much better. And the next day you're going to sin again. And the next day you're going to do just that much better. You're not going to arrive and suddenly be the most patient, perfect person. I have grown tremendously in patience. I really have. In the last 15 years, I have grown so much when I think back to how I was as a brand new wife at 19. And yet I'm just telling you all this week, my lack of patience that I've had. And so it's definitely a lifelong journey that we should be always continually striving in. All right, Ephesians 4:1-3 says, I therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And this is something within families we need to be we often think about this in relationships with people at church, or with with extended family members, or within the body of Christ. But this is absolutely within our own immediate families. We need to be thinking about that bond of unity. All right. And then James is one of my favorite verses. James 1, 2-5. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. All right. That is a great one. That is a great one to memorize, because I can feel like this week I started realizing I was probably feeling a little bit like sorry for myself, a little bit like victim, like, oh, I don't feel good. And, I'm pregnant, and, the kids aren't listening, and the house is a mess, and I have to do these 50 million things in the next 6 months, start piling it on, and you can feel like victim to your situation. And yet right here, James 1 says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Okay, well, you could say what I've been dealing with this week is a light sort of trial. And I'm supposed to count it all joy. Okay, well, that is definitely going to have an effect on my demeanor, on my patience, on how I'm responding to my family. And here I am kind of wanting to be a victim about it all. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. You want to be steadfast. You want to be patient. Well, it's walking through big and small trials and having that joy, counting it all joy. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. That is how we become more Christ-like. So then it goes on to say, if any of you lacks wisdom, that was me this week, lacking wisdom, right? If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. Right here. If you lack wisdom, ask God, and he is faithful to give it to you. Ask God for wisdom in how to respond. Ask God for wisdom in how to proceed. Ask God in wisdom ask God for wisdom in what needs to change in your life, in your circumstances, in your habits. If you lack wisdom, ask God. Ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. All right, James 1 goes on down at verse 19. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person, okay, I got to hear this. Jamie's turning my brain on. I'm listening to this right now. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. This is the exact opposite. The exact opposite of what I was doing this week, which was just utterly lacking wisdom. I was not quick to hear. No, I was very much quick to speak, and I was very quick to anger. And it's so embarrassing to admit that, because it's like, it's right here. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. Okay. But it's true. It's what happens, right? But God says, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. All right. So a lot of what my frustration and anger was coming out was towards the kids. Some of it was probably a little bit justified. Some of it was not at all. It was just me being crabby. Some of it was they were fighting or weren't doing what they were supposed to. And yet my quick to speak, my quick to anger, none of that actually helps. We think it helps in the moment, like, oh, just do what I say. It doesn't. It says right here, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. It is not helping my children become more like Christ. It is not helping them to obey better. It's not helping them to get the things done that they need to be responsible. It's not doing any of those things. It's me sinning and in turn causing more turmoil in my home. So I just want to encourage you, whatever impatience you're dealing with for many, there can be so many different, seasons. And you might be thinking, well, Jamie, you don't understand. I'm walking through this. But the thing is, we are to count it all joy. In whatever season, whatever situation we find ourselves in, we are to turn to the Lord in joy. So if you are struggling with that impatience, whether it's for a small season or this is something you've been doing for a very long time, I want to encourage you to kind of walk through these different steps. It's okay to recognize that there can be external circumstances. There are times where we need to very practically look at our situation and say, I need to change something. Small tweaks, big tweaks, we need to do something. There are times when you realize I just need to pray. And I mean, you need to pray no matter what, if you are making changes or not. Sometimes things are just completely out of our control. We're not happy with the situation. We're not, whatever those emotions you're feeling, but we can go to the Lord in prayer. And you know what? We can ask God for joy too. Say, oh, God says to count it all joy. I'm not feeling that right now. Ask God for that joy, for that perspective, and come to him in prayer every second of every day and start working on memorizing some of this scripture so that you can tell yourself these things back, especially in the moment you have God's word that you can repeat back to yourself. All right, we are going to end it here today. I hope that gave you some encouragement, some practical things. If you're watching on YouTube, you're welcome to comment down below. And thank you guys just so much for tuning in. Make sure that you go check out our Joyful Home app. It's absolutely incredible. You can go see everything that's in it, all the new stuff that's come in. It is awesome. We have all of our past conferences are going to be on there. I think Jason's got like half of them loaded right now. He's still working on getting all of our back catalogs still uploaded there. There's what you see there is only like a fraction of what's going to be on there. And there's already tons. You can go through our natural medicine cabinet boot camp. You can go through our 14-day meal plan boot camp. You can go through any of our past conferences that have so much, like if you're like, oh, I need more content like today's episode, we have conferences full of sessions, not only from myself, but from other really, really, really incredible speakers to give you encouragement that's biblically based. You could spend hours and hours and hours. We also have really fun content for kids. We have Jason's recording the entire complete Winnie the Pooh collection. So volume 1 is already on the app, and he's got volume 2 coming in the next week or two. I also have just wrapped up recording Anne of Green Gables book 1. Jason's in the final editing stage. That will be on the app very soon. And I'm already recording book 2. Had to take a little break this week because of the cold. But I am already pretty deep into recording the book 2. We will have all 8 books coming out on the app over this year. And then I think my next personal project will be recording all 4 books of Little Women. Oh, it's going to be fun. But Jason's got his next book he's going to be recording is Treasure Island. If you've never heard Jason record, he is actually professional audiobook reader. He is amazing. So he's having me do the girl books. It makes sense that I would read Anne of Green Gables, but he's doing all the other reading, and he has a huge lineup of books that are going to be coming to the app. Jason has written a children's book series called The Sterling Spectacles. It follows what is basically our family as we traveled around the country visiting all the national parks, but there's mystery and there's intrigue and there's history and there's science learning about the national parks. It is written for grade school, but I mean, we hear from a lot of middle school and high school kids who love the books as well. There are 6 books so far in the series. Each one follows, it's going to go into a different national park. Jason's starting to write books 7 and 8, and the audiobooks are all on the app. We also have a growing collection of Christian classic audiobooks. So what Jason's really spearheading with this new app is, yes, for women, there's 50 bajillion things in there that would keep you listening and watching and learning for years to come. Jason is now turning his attention to really starting to build out resources for husbands and for kids that are going to be on this app as well. And with one subscription, you can access it on all of your devices. So you can have it downloaded on your phone, your iPhone, where you've got the app and you're watching all this great, amazing, learning all this stuff. And then your kids can have the app downloaded on their iPad while they listen to audiobooks at night. Everything is family friendly. Everything is safe on there. Even if they end up clicking around on one of my videos, there's nothing on there that's going to be bad for them to see. There's no ads. None of the videos run ads. So it's not like YouTube where you're like, oh, this video is safe, and then there's all these ads. There are no ads. Everything on the app is our content, 100%. There's no pop-ups. I've never even thought about telling people this. This is actually really important. There's none of that. It is 100% our app that we have built on a platform that is 100% our content on there. So important to know. But then your husband can also download the app on his phone or view it in a browser and listen to the Christian classic books that are on there. Jason also has some other books he's going to be writing on family worship, on theology. Those are all going to be in the app eventually. So with that one subscription, you can download it on all devices. You can simultaneously access everything all within your family. And the Android app is coming very soon. We should have it really, I keep saying any hour now, but it should be really soon. We have that Android app. But if you're an Android family, you can still just access it on your web browser and it works amazingly well. So it's built really well for all the things. Okay. So if you want to go check that out, go to findingjoyinyourhome.com/app, findingjoyinyourhome.com/app. You can go check it out and go get 20% off the app month after month. And it also applies to the annual plan as well. So you get 2 months free already with the annual plan plus 20% on top, which is such a good deal. So you can go check it out. Findingjoyinyourhome.com/app. All right, ladies, thank you so much for tuning in today. I will see you guys back here next week for the next episode.